We're here. It's time again for Type 40 Live, materialising here with the live stream Doctor Who magazine show all across your view screen in real time on Rumble, X, YouTube, and on Facebook too. All happening in front of a live chat full of friends, fans, and companions just like you. We're live on Thursday, the 20th of June, 2024, bringing you this special reaction show. Following minutes after the screening of a new special presentation of a Doctor Who classic, a seminal slice of the golden age of TV that just happens to line up with current happenings on the series here in 2024. I am Dan Hadley, Birmingham's king of the geeks. You're going to get my hot takes on this one coming up. And there's two. I've got a panel of Time Lords, hand-picked, not that hand, hand-picked and raring to go. They're here now, all lined up. Let's get the console room sorted out. I think it has to be this one, doesn't it? Looks a little sparse, but I'm sure we'll fill it up in a couple of minutes. Credits to the Mind Robber for this fabulous CGI rendition of the season 13 TARDIS console room there. I don't think it was on screen for very long, but it's very, very recognisable and idiosyncratic all the way back there in 1975. Okay, who's here first? We have on the panel today, yes, she's, I don't think she's a nervous wreck after that last hour and a half or so. She's had a chance to put on a bit of lippy. Starry-eyed girl, Sarah Graham.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Dan. Yes, red for Sutekh.
Oh, I see. I wondered if you thought we were doing Horror of Fang Rock instead. You've got to touch the Portland Bill going on there.
It's a bit, yeah, it's very nautical. I'll do that next time when we do Horror of Fang Rock.
Next time. How have you been? How are things?
Good, yeah, because I have no idea what's going on with this era, so it's...
Oh, well, we'll try and fill in.
I know who's back. Obviously, but yeah, it's I've been hiding behind the sofa for the past 7 weeks. Have
you really? There's no sofas here in this TARDIS, is there? Things are very, very sparse back in the 70s and the 80s, weren't they? It's hard to get used to seeing it so free of clutter.
It is, but there's something about it though. There's still that charm, and I do like the 70s TARDIS, and yeah, even though it's bare, well, it's minimal. It doesn't seem as bare as compared to the most recent TARDIS. That's just cavernous. I mean, I know it's meant to be cavernous, but there's large and there's large. This is just a bit more proportionate, I think. I much prefer this one.
I've only just this evening noticed as well that blue trim in the interior doors there. I wonder if that was done purposefully to match the TARDIS. I have no idea, but I suspect I know a man who does. One of our American correspondents, in fact, and a bloody good mate. He's not had that much time to get his thoughts together, but I would imagine he has a few fantastic facts and terrible puns. It can only be Mr. Gary Akers.
Yes, hello. Yay! Boy, this is such an instant reaction. I'm still getting my notes together.
Happy to have you back, mate. He's smiling as well. Look at his little face.
Yes. It's exciting.
It is exciting, and it's lovely to be on a stream again with you, Gary. I've missed you.
Oh, yes, I've missed you.
Heaven can only imagine how Gary Akers has managed to do this, to get on board with this so quickly over there, an ocean away. Feats of IT skills, I suspect, but we won't draw on too much for that. We'll just accept the fact that he's here.
I have a secret source at Bad Wolf who overnighted me the cassette of this. No, I didn't.
There you go. There you go. Do you think, Gary, that the inside, the trim of the interior door there was blue to match the outside of the TARDIS? Is that what's going on?
I've never thought about this. I know that, unless I'm wrong, Pyramids of Mars was the first time that used that kind of hexagonal shape of the door instead of the straight. That kind of angled design, but
the hinge.
It could be, yeah.
Could be very, very nice. So between us, we still have no idea. Happily, somebody else has also answered the call. John Yalden, you got any idea about this one, mate?
No point asking me, is there? I don't know what's going on.
But the
Doing
TARDIS.
good. Then, John.
Scribbling insects.
Oh, it's gone right to his head. Look, the power of Sutekh. Is that how it's gone?
Yeah, well, I did feel like him after I got up after watching the episode. I was feeling I could feel my legs. I could move.
My paralysis has left me. Speaking of which, do you like how I've matched not just the Tom Baker time tunnel there that we've got behind us, but I've got the green splat to match the eyes of Sutekh.
Yeah, very well done. Very well
It was
done.
deliberate,
Red
obviously.
on
It was. You know, whenever I watch a piece of classic Doctor Who from any era that it happens to be from, the 60s or 70s or the 80s, or even the TV movie, I can't help but think, it's not that I don't enjoy and immerse myself in the episode, but I can't help but think of the people who put this together at a time where television wasn't exactly in its infancy. But you can see, obviously, you can see more of the joins as time goes on, and that is part of the charm. But knowing that just out of sight were guys with clapperboards and binders, with their, yes, Peter Grimwade there on the left with Tom Baker and Elizabeth Sladen, but all the other people that were there, obviously on far smaller studio floors. It must have been, you know, particularly when the clock was counting down, it must have been so hectic, Sarah.
It must have been, yeah, and you know, all those helping hands that were noticeably absent from this version.
They were. The hand was gone.
The hand was gone. I was very upset about that, actually.
How dare they?
Yeah, it's obviously.
Do you realise, Sarah, how many jokes, how many filthy jokes I'm stopping from leaving my lips right now?
Oh, come on, go for it.
We can still get to that.
We have no time. We have no time because although the night is kind of young, where some of us are in the world, here we are later than usual because we realised we had to get right on this special event, and I think that some of us could be foaming at the mouth or gushing with glee. We'll find out from the live chat there because, of course, as always, we are here broadcasting to YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and X to a live chat full of folk out there waiting to share their takes on this event too and hear what we've got to say. But Type 40 Live is the Type 40 Live is the Doctor Who magazine show, of course, full of news, views, nostalgia, banter, dad jokes, fan art, everything else. But when needs must, and when there's a big event happening, we must give you our instant reactions as the Whoniverse expands, and we try to keep up with it. Thank you to everybody who's joined the channel, who's subscribed in the last week or so. It's been a real period of growth for us during this entire season, which, you know, you can say what you like about the Gatwa era so far. I think that at least that has to be a good thing. So we're really grateful to all of that, and whether this is your first, your second, or your 5th or 10th live stream, or your 150th, you're just as welcome. So keep the comments coming there in the live chat, and we'll check in with you in a few minutes. Yes, so like any piece of entertainment or pop culture, you mess with classic Doctor Who episodes at your peril. We fans are fiercely protective for better or worse, and it's very hard to appease us when we feel that material that, especially the stuff, John, that we've grown up with, if we feel it's been lessened or cheapened in some way, and the work of those legends in front and behind of the camera has been disrespected or infected with something of the other,
yeah,
well, they have to fight us off. Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
because we can sniff out when something doesn't belong, don't we? Particularly if we've seen these episodes 1,000,001 times. And this evening, the BBC have premiered a new entry in their Doctor Who spin-off series, Tales of the TARDIS. Previous episodes brought back some of our wonderful family of Doctor Who cast members, didn't they, to reintroduce new re-edits of past adventures. But they were in character too, and it was all set aboard this familiar but not familiar custom console room there, which we haven't seen on screen in the actual show just yet. And they were pretty well received, weren't they, for the most part? I think we were kind of captivated by not just seeing some of the legends, but exactly what was that set, what was going on. So did you watch any of those, John?
Yeah, I watched all of them. There were some that I didn't enjoy, and there were some that I did. I'm still not sure I kind of like the concept of it, to be honest.
Me neither.
Yeah, It's
strange, isn't it?
It's bizarre. And then I'll be honest, I'm still confused at the end of the one we've just seen, mate. Is that set during? Because it said that it was during the battle, but is it set during the battle? You know,
I think that it will become more evident when we see the conclusion to the actual finale. I think it'll probably slot in quite nicely then. I'm the same with you about this format. In some ways, I feel it's aimed squarely at us, and yet in other ways, not at us. It's a strange place, isn't it? And you can see, in all fairness, I can see the predicament they're in, because the idea, Gary, is obviously to give extended life to these old episodes and to reach people who wouldn't buy the Blu-rays or binge watch on whatever, isn't it? It's like the click of a button away on the old Hoofa Doofa, people who may change over because there's a continuity announcement that says, oh, there's a classic Doctor Who on. Oh, I wonder what that's like. I wonder what all the fuss is about. So there's that, and yet it's still very, very geeky. It still feels geeky.
Well, I noticed this morning as I was kind of calling up the iPlayer and looking at the Tales of the TARDIS menu of all the 6 ones, that all of those I think were pretty much intact. 97 minutes, 100 minutes, whatever. And so immediately before this one, I go, well, what was about this one that needed to be cut to whatever length, as opposed to just doing the 4. But I remember saying, Dan, on a past Type 40 stream that we were talking about it, that I actually bought into the emotion of those new scenes that they were trying to generate, the reunion with like Stephen and Vicky, or the Doctor and Tegan. And I got to admit, for a couple of them, got choked up. So I think in me, at least, I mean, I'm a sap. They kind of did evoke the emotion that I think they were trying to evoke in the audience. So in that sense, those worked for me. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about this, Sarah? Because the idea is that they are available, obviously, to the TV license payer there. They are at the push of a button or even the swipe of a screen, aren't they? You can get the iPlayer and the Whoniverse app on tablets, on any kind of touchscreen device, any phone. So that is still very sound in its concept, isn't it? And whilst there hasn't been a furore whipped up about this brand within the Whoniverse domain on iPlayer, it's quite a strong format. I think it clearly stands up to a certain amount of flexibility, as long as you've got a good handle on the story that you're telling, and you can sort of frame it effectively with the right people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it works as a concept, as in a concept of getting new people, because I think you have to. The stories that they picked were very pivotal stories, especially Earthshock. You have to have that emotional connection with these characters, I think, for it to work. So you've got to be familiar with them, and I don't think you can just get it from one story. I see what they were trying to do, but if you're not engaged, if you've not been invested with Adric and Nyssa and Tegan and the Fifth Doctor,
that's true.
You're not going to get the feels.
Who the hell are they? Yeah.
So to me, it wasn't, and obviously we know it was a last minute thing, but for me, it worked for the anniversary. It was a nice way of getting the older actors in from Classic Who. I don't think it will have probably got many. It might have got some, but yeah, I think you're right, Dan. I think it was more for us. It was to pull on our heartstrings. It clearly worked for Gary. It worked for me. There was a few times where I started getting choked up, and these things that would confuse people. I think especially the Seventh Doctor and Ace thing. I think a lot of newer fans, they would be totally bamboozled by that relationship that Seven had Ace off, because again,
it was so different. Yeah,
it wasn't just from the Curse of Fenric. He manipulated Ace in Ghostlight, in so many things.
Yeah, you're quite right. They weren't generic conversations that were had between the Doctors and companions. They were very particular to who they were. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. I mean, obviously, here we are in 2024, and people are well, gradually getting used to Ncuti, Gatwa and Millie Gibson as the leads of the show. And there they were to bookend this latest surprise episode of Tales of the TARDIS. Now, we worked this out, I think, exclusively on the weekend show last week, didn't we? That a further classic story was on the way, and this time it's been remastered and re-edited into an omnibus edition again, but has been given what they've termed as a cosmic makeover. Now, if that isn't enough to fill the hearts of the average classic sci-fi fan with dread, John, I don't know what is. Cosmic makeover, reboot, it's one of those things. It immediately hits scar tissue, doesn't it, for all the hash jobs that we've seen done before.
Yeah, I was skeptical as well because of I didn't like the Dalek colorization previously. And I will be honest, I didn't enjoy this. The original is still the far superior version for me. And it just works beautifully, and that's why it's always been my number one story. So that's where I am with it. There's some little bits I liked, but we'll get into it as we go along, won't we?
Absolutely will. So yes, Tales of the TARDIS is back. This is up on the iPLAYER, BBC iPLAYER, indefinitely through that Whoniverse hub there. And yes, so this is the thing. It's been this story, this arguably seminal story that, John, it's your favourite of all time. I know it's a favourite of many, many people out there, has been updated. The special effects have been updated. That's what's made this different from all the other entries. The idea being to give 1975's Pyramids of Mars an extra allure, I suppose, for the people who may have seen The Legend of Ruby Sunday at the weekend and are counting the days till that story reached its conclusion. At the weekend, we were left on a cliffhanger, weren't we? On a cliffhanger. So when it comes to classic Doctor Who, we love it. The people who are making it, they profess to love it, but in many respects, they've got to. It's one thing to say that they love it, but to demonstrate that in actions such as these, that's another thing entirely, isn't it? We do have this quote from Phil Collinson when he was promoting this, and he said, "Revisiting the rich history of Doctor Who is endlessly thrilling, and this is no exception. It's so exciting to bring back Tales of the TARDIS again and to revisit a classic enemy of the Doctor. Gabriel Wolfe as Sutekh returning to terrify a whole new generation of children in a blistering season finale is what makes this show so special and appeal to so many across generations." So Phil is kind of promoting Tales of the TARDIS and promoting the finale at the same time. But obviously the idea is to fold this in very, very neatly and to stimulate further interest. Times obviously do change, and last week on Doctor Who, it was a hell of a cliffhanger. There was tears, there was incantations, there was skulls cracking, when there was outstretched hands. Everybody likes an outstretched hand when somebody gets possessed in Doctor Who, and the open mouth of the latest incarnation of the Doctor there. Very, very potent stuff, and it did harken back, I felt, to this classic time when the series was most influenced, I suppose, by Hammer horror movies and a certain brand of the popularization of horror. I think in the late 60s and early 70s, it was they were horror stories, but they weren't horrific, were they? Because this was a decade and a half before slasher fiction. So the scares were still just slightly out of the eyesight, and I think that's why they drizzled down so beautifully to Doctor Who.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to hear about the actual terror of it, read the Target novel, because that goes a lot further.
It goes a lot further. Goes a lot further indeed. So yes, we don't know if we hope you've had time to watch it. Obviously, we've literally just come racing to the webcams and the mics after the screening of that over there on BBC4. So that, I think that was on 8 p.m. until about 9:15, wasn't it? So they've got it down to around 75 minutes, Gary. Which, you know, when you hear that, when you realise that, it is a little bit disconcerting. You think, oh, what have they left out? Why may they have done this? Why may they have done that? And then the credits start to roll. And I think part of us, depending on how well we know the material, we clock things instantly. Sometimes we don't. But I suppose the measure of this material, realistically speaking, without the obsessive geek's hat on, is that if the stories are as strong as we tell one another, and anybody else will listen out there. If they're as strong as we insist they are, then they should stand up pretty well to this kind of treatment. We're going to find out as we get deeper into this. This is Type 40 Live, the live stream Doctor Who magazine show, and you can find us here usually every Thursday at 8 p.m, where we get into it with, we do the news, the views, the rants, and the banter, and the nostalgia, and everything else. Of course we do, but this is our special reaction show to that special presentation of Pyramids of Mars from earlier on this evening. If you want more from us, you can find that over at the Type 40 Podbean feed. That's our home feed, type40.podbean.com, and find the podcast across all major podcatchers too. We're just a couple of days away from the conclusion to this season of Doctor Who, streaming on Disney Plus and also on the iPlayer. We want your comments about that as well. Of course we do. But for now, yes, we're heading back, all the way back to 1975 and the best of times. The best of times? Yeah, the best of times.
I agree.
The universe is collapsing. The only way to save it is to watch Type 40.
Yes, so Ruby and the Doctor have paused in battle, so the publicity says, for this, to reflect on their adventures. The Time Lord, with the help of the remembered TARDIS, recounts a far earlier encounter with the same malevolent foe there. A foe that may have only appeared once in the series' history, but has cast a long shadow, I think mostly because of the incredible booming voice and the solemn mask there of Sutekh himself. So in this story, an inexplicable force draws the TARDIS to an old priory in the year 1911, where an earlier incarnation of the Doctor and his friend Sarah find a sinister Egyptian summoning up the awful power of an ancient god in the Pyramids of Mars. And this is a special presentation on BBC4 of a story originally broadcast from the 25th of October all the way to the 15th of November in 1975. So that's 4 parts. And of course, in the intervening years, 49 years, Pyramids of Mars has been released on VHS and DVD. We're still waiting for the season 13 box set to be announced on Blu-ray for when that's going to join that line and look its very, very best. But here to fill that gap is this new edition of a beloved story, slotting in between the screenings of each half of those season finales that have brought Sutekh himself back to the screen after all this time. So here we are. Proof the pudding is in the eating. How effectively do you think this one was done then, in light of everything that we've just said, John?
I didn't think it was great. I think there are elements of it that really took me out of it, whereas the original doesn't. One example I would say is right at the beginning, where Scarman goes into the pyramid, and they cut to Sutekh's appearance. For me, that just took me straight out of it. It just didn't sit right in that particular scene.
No. I noticed that immediately. It should have been. I can see why they did it, but it should have just have been his eyes, I feel, rather than his whole face.
This completely spoiled him, because they're trying to get new people to watch this in preparation for the finale, right? So it's completely spoiled the moment that Sutekh's servant comes out of the time corridor. And he says, "Is this the face of Sutekh?" Well, we know it isn't, because we've just bloody seen him in the very first opening scene. You've showed him the mask,
and that's that's so good, Sarah, because it builds up, doesn't it, throughout that episode?
So
you're
lost
learning
that.
who Sutekh is.
Absolutely, John. So you've completely lost all that suspense. And I get it. Obviously, they're thinking, okay, maybe they haven't got the attention span, because it takes a long time for us to actually see Sutekh. I do understand what they were going for, but that was far too quick. They should have just left it, like you said.
You see what I mean, Sarah? If they'd have just have had those piercing green eyes out of a deep black, that would have conveyed the same thing. Would have given a focal point for whatever was attacking Marcus Scarman, but it wouldn't have shown everything. It would have shown just enough.
Yeah, so it was or even just a black hand, because obviously he was wearing all black. It wouldn't have given the game away quite so soon. So I just thought that was a bit silly.
Another
really.
thing I was going to say at the beginning as well was they had that initial scene where the updated TARDIS is going through space and then it cuts to the interior. But then they keep the original stock where it's moving around because Sutekh's appeared. And I thought, well, I get that, but if you're going to do the first, surely you do the second. And then later on, I thought, do we need to see Mars?
You're talking about the establishing shot when the TARDIS goes to Mars far later. To be honest, sometimes when I watch classic Doctor Who, I do feel like establishing shots like that to really convey a change of scenery. I do feel they're lost when I watch classic Doctor Who, and I thought that was beautifully judged myself. But what you're saying about the TARDIS, when the TARDIS first appeared, shuffling its way through space and time the way it did in those days, Gary, I actually thought that the new special effect was really lovely because it didn't do anything super duper. The TARDIS wasn't sort of crashing its way down a time corridor or materializing in the way it did at the beginning of Legend of Ruby Sunday, for example. It was still gently wobbling away the way it did, but it was just CGI TARDIS in a slightly more detailed sort of space field. But just like John said, the next time we cut to it, they cut back to the old model shot. I thought that just completely broke the spell. Replace all of them or none at all. Yeah. Something like this needs consistency, doesn't it?
I mean, overall, I was trying to keep track during the broadcast of like what I saw that was added, what was cut, what was changed, the new stuff. I was trying to time out each of the episodes so I can kind of get a sense of kind of how much was cut from each episode. But I totally agree with Sarah that first shot of, I noticed they also cut out the Super Sister Stavages line, which I guess these days, was going to be a given. But it seems like that they're trying that they thought unless the audience could be grabbed like in the first 20 seconds of this by seeing the villain, they weren't going to stay with it, would be my estimation. But it's like, give the audience some credit and give some credit to the power of building up suspense.
Don't you think also, Gary, that has society become so lazy now that you could save money by doing this, and you could just go, well, the original's on BBC iPlayer, so just press that button. But overall, I mean, I know we're not into the wrap up yet, but overall, I would have to say, I mean, first of all, I was dreading this like nobody's business. I was like, what are they going to cut? I'd even kind of speculated with Sarah and John separately on, instant messaging. They're probably going to cut this. They're probably going to add this. I was surprised by some of the stuff that they kept. Some of the stuff they cut, I was expecting. Some of the stuff they'd added was like, okay, that was odd, but okay. Some of the stuff I enjoyed, such as Dan said, the establishing shot of Mars when they would hit the force barrier and it would shimmer. I thought
I liked that as well.
That's a good addition.
Did you notice how when the Doctor was trying to find the door, the bubble effect just tracked along the edge of the branch he was holding? I thought that was good. A lot of that was nicely done, I feel.
Yeah, I agree. That effect worked for me. I've got to be honest, I didn't like the updated time tunnel. As disco as the original effect is, seeing this new version of the time vortex that's on out, it just immediately took me out of it.
That really confused me because you're quite right. Every time they cut away to it, we got the time vortex as we see on television in the opening credits of current Doctor Who. And I can see why they would do that now, but the main reason why this confused me is because they've been using an updated version of the original time corridor on the publicity posters for the new series all the way through. So unless we've got it all wrong, unless that's not what they've been doing and it's just a coincidence. So where was that? Is that going to be on screen come Saturday? Or is this just a piece of flashy design that was never meant to tie into that? What are we supposed to think?
I'm going to add to that, Dan, because I'm even more confused because at one point we have the music from Legopolis in the episode as well.
Yes, so I noticed that.
Actually, if I can
turn up on Saturday,
if I can clarify my esteemed, if I can clarify my esteemed co-panelists, I was struck by that, but I think that was actually the re-edited music from the pre-credit sequence in Castrovalva, which I actually prefer to the Logopolis.
Oh,
music.
that is impressive that you can tell the difference. Yes, there was an extra tinkle, but of course the reason why that was there, is because they were talking about radio telescope signals, wasn't it? And when it kicks in, we noticed it immediately because that's the story is largely set at a radio telescope, isn't it? Logopolis, Tom Baker's final story. I thought that was an indulgence too far. That whilst it didn't break the spell for me, I thought. I think I even said out loud, "Oh, you think you're so clever, don't you?"
Yeah,
And
it's just completely unnecessary. Really.
totally
I
unnecessary.
didn't hate it. I was just going.
No, me neither.
I went. That's because kind of odd, but okay.
Yeah, I have to
And
admit,
casuals won't have noticed.
No.
Anybody who's watching the show, and younger fans won't have noticed as well. It gone completely past them. But I do feel it was an indulgence on the part of Ben Cook. I understand that Ben Cook is responsible for this, Gary, as he was the
that's what
re-edit
John
of
told me.
Doctor Who
Yes.
and the Daleks
I could
back
tell,
in
especially
November.
in the.
I like it when they're
first part.
subtle. I like things when they're subtle, like when he's deactivating the generator loop. There's now, I think they've added like a little green glow on the head of the I guess not the jackal's head, of the generator little loop.
I didn't notice
when
that.
he hits it with the sonic, there's like a little green glow, and I thought, okay, well that kind of subtle thing, that's fine.
I think there was another little bit. I think when I'm blanking on his name at the beginning.
Namin.
Dr. Warlock.
I mean, when he hears the organ music, when he's being summoned, there's a little glow in his eyes. Did you pick up on that?
Oh,
Yes, I did, but I hadn't realised it was new.
Very good.
Yeah.
See, I decided to approach this as someone who's seen it probably a couple of dozen times, maybe 3 dozen times in the 30 odd years since the VHS cassette came out. I decided to approach this cold and be kind of swept along with it. So I actually tried not to notice things. I just tried to look at it as a new viewer possibly could, and to be swept along in it. And so I went the opposite route to you, Gary. I didn't make a note of anything. I just thought, well, if something stands out to me, then I'll work out why it stands out to me later.
Nitpicker. I was actually honestly taking whatever notes I thought we might need for this.
No, I absolutely did. I was sat here like this, like, all right then, Benjamin, impress me, because
I dare you.
Well, in all truth, I don't think it's about nitpicking. I think that we all watch these things in different ways and in different mindsets. We consume this stuff differently because that connection that we each make between ourselves and Doctor Who can often be so personal. So I would never call anybody a nitpicker for noticing this stuff when you've grown up watching it, John. And I mean, how many times have you seen Pyramids of Mars?
Oh, hundreds of times. I've lost count, but it will be involved on Saturday's finale. I can guarantee you it. What they'll do, they'll cut back to Logopolis and there'll be a giant Sutekh and he'll just flick the Fourth Doctor off of the radio telescope. And that'll link into it.
Maybe this weekend the Doctor will push Sutekh off the radio telescope.
They'll just bend like God. But I do want to say that in the interest of balance, while I was sat, because I'm like John, I've watched this millions of times. I love this story. Grace has never seen it. He's a brand new newbie. He only knows Gabriel Wolfe as the voice of the Beast. So he sat and watched it with me. So while I was sat here like this, I'd got my Nomi like barometer. Yeah. And he did it, he enjoyed it. He followed it all and he really enjoyed it. So okay,
I do understand. I mean, I think it's a given. We're all saying, when you have a classic Robert Holmes story with the Fourth Doctor and Sarah, we consider any alteration of it desecration. I get that. I really do. But when presented with the practical duty of, okay, you have to trim something. Like, for example, I understand from that aspect why they cut a lot of the Victoria used to travel with me. That was her dress, because on new viewers, that would be like, so that I kind of, understand.
See, as iconic as that line is, and it's a line I've always enjoyed, I didn't notice it not being there.
Yeah.
And it's only now that you've said that I thought, oh, yes. Yes, so Robert Holmes did write this story. Well, kind of rewrote it, heavily rewrote Lewis Griefer's original script, which Holmes declared later as being completely unworkable, unusable. And the story went out under the named writer, Stephen Harris. Stephen Harris doesn't exist. It's, yes, Robert Holmes rewriting Lewis Griefer's original story. There was additional material, of course, filmed and produced for this version that was directed by Jamie Donahue, who is the guy who's directing, I think he's done both parts of the season finale as well. So there's a consistency there. I thought those scenes that bookended this were actually really, really nice. And it was Ncuti kind of at his best as well. I think we said on the last show that Ncuti seems to be, the quieter moments tend to be when we see him doing more with the part, strangely enough, rather than running around. So I really felt those too. And Millie Gibson was great in it as well. But it was strange seeing them in that set, and I do wonder how it's going to figure into the story. But there've been markers of Pyramids of Mars stretching right the way back this particular season, haven't they? And this is something that annoyed quite a few people, because in The Devil's Cord we had a scene, didn't we, where the Doctor and Ruby went into the future, if you remember, and they saw what a future Earth would be like if they didn't stop Maestro. Which was, even some of the lines were direct lifts, weren't they, from Pyramids of Mars? Did you spotted that, I suppose, Gary?
Well, I was wondering, it sounded like the sound effects of the whistling wind was new. It seemed like the graphics were the same, but the whistling wind felt like new and kind of more booming to me, unless I'm totally wrong.
Because with that episode as well, though, I actually, at the time, I was edging more towards New Who, is it the beast from the Satan pit? Because there's a quote in there about falling into the pit. So I thought, it's a nod to that, but clearly not.
I actually expected, that was one of the scenes I expected to be more like apocalyptic. I was thinking, well, they're gonna update that and make that 21st century CGI, but I think they left the graphics pretty much alone, and I was pleased with that, because that's such an iconic scene.
So those are our opening thoughts here about this brand new presentation of Pyramids of Mars, courtesy of Tales of the TARDIS there on BBC4 and BBC iPlayer. But we are live streaming this, of course we are, to a chat full of our friends, fans and companions out there, and they're adding their comments too, their potted reviews and their pet peeves, no doubt. Let's go and check in and see if the children have been playing. Yes, thank you everybody for the comments so far. Let's track our way back and see what's been said since the close of this special evening, this new version of such an important story in Doctor Who history. Wow, and we have lots to get into. Thank you everybody. Hello everybody, lots of hellos, including this one from Adrian James, and another from Ben Casey. Good to see you, gentlemen. Absolutely love it. We have cheers y'all from Cliff Maxwell too, and I like it from Michael Q there, straight in there with something positive, something upbeat. Wow, we have a lot here. I'm trying to scroll back and get it all. We have T-Dwarf Productions in there. That's our Tom. Of course, it is good to see you again, Tom. And we have Vanessa Law in as well. Happy to see you here, Vanessa. Heaven knows what time it is, where she is. Hello all, says Darren Wilshaw. Looking forward to this. So are we. So was I. Be careful what you wish for. A lovely console image, says Darren Abkem. Yes, again, that's courtesy of the Mind Robber, a fantastic artist and researcher on the internet, I think for the best part of 20 years that site's been going. So head over to themindrobber.com for all of that, and please tell them that Type 40 sent you. Good afternoon from Vancouver, Canada, says the Time Scales.
Hello.
And we've got Adam in on over there on X. Adam, the Lethal Munnet. It's that Dan fella. It's that Adam fella. Good to see you, mate. Hello. And JG says hello all as well. We'll get some more hellos in, no doubt, as we're going on. Let's get to some of these reviews. Who's first? Hopefully, everyone is staying hydrated, especially if anyone lives in certain places in America. Says YW. Is there a bit of a sweat on, Gary? What's going on?
Not here, but I think in the eastern part of the country, there's a heat wave going on.
Wow.
Tom says here that it's good to see another classic monster come back to the show. I think for every person you find that feels the way that Tom does, it's, oh, great, we can see them again. There's somebody who says, oh, my God, what are they going to do to my favourite, John?
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad to see a great villain back. But I've also, as that Who fan, I'm shivering a little bit, thinking, please do it justice at the weekend.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, when that first scene of Doctor and Sarah in the TARDIS, before the face appears, I braced myself for the dog. I
Me
seriously
too.
did. I thought we were going to go there. And when I saw the face, I was like, oh, thank God.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I was looking at this because I did wonder when this was up on screen, because following the story again and listening to the script as well, Gary, in light of the fact that Sutekh has returned to the show, I was looking at the sarcophagus here, and even though you can't see it in this image, just above that golden scarab on its brow is what they describe as a lodestone, and it seems to have some sort of psychic ability. And I did wonder, looking at the new story, is that the same stone that is in the headset there, the sort of headdress, the adornment of the big dog thing that's holding onto the TARDIS like that? Because obviously this creature has taken possession of the TARDIS and is performing a similar function, a passage through space and time there that the sarcophagus did in Pyramids of Mars. Do you think that's the lodestone there set upon its brow?
Yeah.
You know what? I hadn't thought about it, but that sounds absolutely fantastic to me. I mean, even if they don't address it, that sounds so logical and makes so much internal sense that, absolutely.
And I wonder,
I'd like to think
I wonder if we have another one as well in a certain package from the synopsis about being on another planet.
Oh, okay.
TD's put something out about a package on another planet.
But that's the one.
I haven't seen that.
That's the one thing, Dan, I guess that's an advantage to basically putting the original with the various imagery, like what you just mentioned with the lodestone, out in front of people's awareness 24 hours before the finale. Because if they do make that connection, it's going to be right, fresh, and
prominent in the front of their heads. Yeah, I agree, in the front of their minds. We've got TARDIS Travels here in the live chat on YouTube, who says they managed to get the CGI. They managed to CGI the hand out on Sutekh's chair when he stands up. So this is one of the most famous gaffes in Doctor Who history, isn't it, John? And they've left it in, haven't they, in all previous editions? I mean, they never used to edit anything out of the VHSs, really. But in the DVDs, they left it in. So remind us, what exactly happened and why was it so noticeable?
Well, it was always there, and I always felt sorry for Sutekh because for eternity, I actually felt like someone was having a cheeky grope, He was sat on that chair for eternity, and
that's why they edited it out. It was
I always thought it was like one of Sutekh's frat brothers who was kind of sticking the hand right underneath there for 10,000 years. Yeah,
but they CGI the cushion though, didn't they? I didn't see the cushion either.
They had to get rid of the hand.
Yeah, but the poor Sutekh being sat there for eternity, could have got piles.
Yeah. Fly Highlands in the live chat as well. Hi, Ass says, I was surprised they didn't change the time tunnel to the effect that was on the posters. Yeah, just like we've just said, just like we've noticed. We've got some more comments here. Sam's in. Good to see you. Peter Harrington says it's too hot for me. Phew. Where are you, Peter? Where are you? I thought you were in Liverpool. Maybe he's abroad after all.
Mars.
Hi, Dan, Sarah, Gary, and John. Hi to you, Stephen. Hi to you. We've got something from Stephen coming up later on. Mega Neurobytes in the live chat as well, and he says, I think all the changes were completely unnecessary. That's a very hard line to walk. I mean, what do you think of that, Sarah? I mean, is that fair, or is this just somebody being understandably, in this case, like I was saying, quite proprietorial,
Yeah.
and I like what I like, left alone as it was.
I agree. I just think when people have grown up with this and they love it so much, they see any change as it's just wrong. And
Sacrilege.
You love everything. You love
Yeah.
every line. You love every scene, even the gaffs. And I get it. There were things I was bristling, especially towards the end when they ended up in the pyramid.
There was more, as it moved on, Sarah, there was more missing from the latter half and the latter quarter of the story in particular, wasn't there? There was quite a lot truncated there, which I did notice.
I was trying to roughly time it out. It seemed like, not counting the opening with Ncuti, Millie, it seems like the first episode was fairly intact with a couple of tweaks. That was around 24 minutes. The next two episodes were around 20 minutes. So you figure you add in the original reprise and everything. So there's maybe about 2 or 3 minutes cut from that. The final episode was about 15 minutes. So it seems like the bulk of it, which was around 10 minutes, cut from that, where you cut all the thing about, which I figured they were going to. I mentioned it to John and Sarah. They're going to cut the riddle with Sarah being trapped in the cylinder.
I love that so much.
No, of course, that's a given. That's a given. But so it seems like the fourth episode was the one that kind of suffered the most.
Yeah, this entire iconic sequence was missing, wasn't it? And it does go on for quite a long time, but it's so characteristic of that particular episode. When I think back to this entire story and that last quarter, Sarah, I wouldn't be able to imagine it without these scenes. No, but again, that's the baggage that I'm going to bring to it, I suppose.
Right. Well, I don't think it is baggage. I think the problem is there were two. Well, I mean, I don't like Benjamin Cook as an editor. I think he's like Edward Scissorhands anyway. But it cheapens the impact. Lessens the impact. We've had all
of reaching Sutekh.
It's so powerful. It's so powerful. They put in all these things.
Yeah.
And then you don't even get to see, the fact, there were logic puzzles. You had to use your brain. They already said, how intelligent they were. All the problem solving. You got to see the Doctor being that problem solver.
Right.
It was meant to test. And I just feel like.
Do you think that this presentation could have stood an extra 5 minutes being left in there?
Oh, easily.
So do I.
Yeah.
And I think the episode that we've just watched at the weekend, where they were going about the anagrams and stuff like that. Well, for me as a kid, this was my element of anagrams and stuff like that. I loved the Doctor going, well, and I remember going to school trying to figure it out in my head, going, so if you're the evil guardian, you're trying to deceive me, blah 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 blah. So it's got to be this button. I love all of that.
I mean, I'm not sure whether Doctor Who was the first show to do that, but I know that I've seen several movies and TV shows do the exact same thing beat for beat since. And I'd like to think, particularly in the case of Labyrinth, because it was pretty much a British film, that whoever wrote that, was Terry Jones wrote it, didn't he? That he probably did see the Doctor Who. I don't know. Let's look at some more comments here. We've got Daryl Joyce in the live chat who says it wasn't too disrespectful, but the top and tail stuff wasn't any good. We've got Woodhouse 122 who says, I'm glad it wasn't as badly edited as the Daleks in colour. The Daleks in colour, of course, from last November. Again, we know people who work on that. A brilliant feat of colorisation, which we did a reaction show to that as well. And I love that in many respects. But of course, I think there were 2 points of consolation with that over the months have really stuck with people, and one of which was the editing, again, particularly in the last sort of third, wasn't it? And also, that was obviously the work of Ben Cook as well. Again, nothing against Ben Cook. I don't know the gentleman. I've read a lot of his work. I think he's a very talented writer. I enjoy his work, but I agree with Woodhouse, basically. I think this was done much, much better, even though what I've just said, I think another 5 minutes, I can't really see the harm that another 5 minutes would have done. TARDIS Travels enjoyed some of the new special effects. Apart from the ones that you guys have mentioned, I didn't notice anything particularly audacious, anything shattering apart from that time tunnel. Was there anything else that I might have missed?
Well, I was going to say that Mars shot, was that from Waters of Mars? Did they just?
I did wonder
that because it looked very.
I'm like Dan. I
very
thought that
familiar.
scene. I like that scene because I mean it's an establishing shot. I mean, you've switched locations from Earth to another planet, and I think that was fine. I was honestly expecting the explosion of the rocket to be like this fantastic new CGI explosion. I was kind of pleased that they left it.
Mhm, yeah.
I think
it was strange. I think that it was strange, John. The things that they chose to update and the things they chose to leave as they were. Come to think of it,
yeah, I think the thing that took me out of it as well was when the Doctor goes to Mars and he appears, and they just ramped up the music, and it wasn't like the original where that music is just works brilliantly. You know, he's against the wall and it all works. They kind of put a different twist to it, and it just didn't. It's like they upped the beat on it or something, but it just didn't work for me. I don't know if you know what I'm referring to.
You know, it altered the atmosphere. There wasn't that. It seemed to be going for more action than like the atmosphere, like the unease and the tension. Which again, I think that's just a generation thing. I think that's just a.
What do you all think about the method of trimming for time, where they kind of overlay, instead of having a whole scene followed by another whole scene, they overlay like with the quick shots and overlay the dialogue to create that sense of simultaneous.
I like
time.
that. Well, I liked it in this. I don't think it worked very well in the Daleks, but I liked it in this.
It worked when they were doing the jaw.
Yes,
that worked because it was an instantaneous reaction as sort of. It didn't work the second time. I felt like it was a bit on fast forward. But again, I can understand.
Yeah,
the
jar scene worked.
Yeah,
with that.
Yeah, it was an interesting, I'd say, experiment, because it was kind of almost, to me, it felt like it was like really was like a hybrid between Classic Who and New Who, where they were trying to get the format into New Who and adapting Classic Who to try and tie with that.
Because in modern television, John, that does happen, doesn't it? And it's been happening for a long time, probably since the 90s, come to think of it.
Yeah, so I could see what they were trying to do, and you know, it's an interesting, you know, attempt at it. But again, because I've grown up with it my whole life, and I know beat for beat that story. It's so
there's
memorable.
that element, John, isn't there? If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm waiting for them to do the time lash version.
Oh, yes, more band rules. We need to see the band rules from the neck down next time. Peter Harrington says the force field edition was not needed, and little silly add-ons, mostly music cues. I think you really have to know that story frame by frame to notice the music cues. I didn't.
Music that corrected as well, I'm sure.
I didn't notice any, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. There was a little bit at one point.
Yeah.
I do like the fact that the Tales of the TARDIS itself has got its own theme tune, its own end title sequence. I know they use the classic Doctor Who theme. There's a sting at the start, but it's got its own end sequence, which I think does actually kind of fit quite nicely. I quite like that. TARDIS Travels reminds us that there was an earlier edition, the 1976 repeat, that was edited down to 60 minutes. Now, I've never seen that. I would imagine that will be on the Blu-ray, won't it, Gary?
I think so.
I don't know who would have. I don't know who would have supervised. Who would have supervised that? It probably wasn't even Philip Inchcliffe, was it? Somebody must have signed off.
Who did back in the 70s, Dan? Because I don't remember offhand. I know in the 70s, like at Christmas, they used to do the Omnibus. They used to pick a story.
That's right.
And run it. Who edited those together?
I can't remember. So I think the idea was, when they first started doing it, I think Barry Letts wanted to be quite hands-on with it, but because of his workload, I think he couldn't with one example, and there was some sort of set to about it. I think Simon will probably be able to tell you the story about that. He probably knows them inside out.
Yeah.
We've got Darren Bullshaw
say that right
in the live
now
chat as well.
Yeah, he'll be.
Yeah.
Simon, where are you?
Like a member of the SAS, all in black in the balaclava.
Come to us, Simon. Come to us.
Fan to the rescue.
We have so many comments in the live chat asking about that hand. The hand itself does seem to have its own fan base.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
going
what, you
to
know
watch,
what, Dan?
says Nigel David.
Maybe this final episode should have been called The Hand of Sutekh. That would have been a great
Eating
title.
the buttocks of Sutekh.
Yeah, Garbage is not a fan of the Daleks in colour. Frank Cronog is in the live chat and says, I enjoyed the edit. It flowed well. Only real edits were in part 4, but it didn't ruin it, in my opinion. And I like the new effects too. I think that's pretty even-handed.
I admit it. This story does work as an omnibus, as a feature-length thing, because not all Doctor Who stories do work as a feature-length thing. You know, because the cliffhangers are, you know, such a big thing about it. But I think this one did. Yeah, I just wish they'd just not edit it quite so much.
I can watch it again.
A bit.
Yeah, I can watch it again, and I probably will watch it again. I mean, the original, as I said, is my favourite, and that'll always be the
Do you think, John? Do you think though that bear in mind this is your favourite story, and it's up there. I mean, it's certainly one of mine for a number of reasons. Is this something that you could potentially show a newbie, a normie, who said, "Why do you like Doctor Who so much?" And you say, "Well, this is my favourite story. Just take a look at this with the fact it's got a very modern framing sequence, and it's just that little bit quicker, and it's such a strong story." I think I could probably show this, send a link to somebody, or suggest where they can find it, and be pretty confident that. Let's put it this way: if they don't enjoy this, they're never going to enjoy classic Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And I've got a different approach to showing new people Doctor Who than you. I tend to chain them to the radiator and let them watch the episode through.
Even
lying,
it's not lying. I've seen it. I mean, Chris finds classic Who quite slow, and that some of the effects it does take him out. He is a new Who fan, but he really enjoyed this, and I've been trying to get him to watch Pyramids of Mars because it is so dear to me. I said, but the voice of Sutekh is the voice of Satan, you love that episode. And so when we said like it was going to come on BBC 4, I went, please watch it because it'll be interesting for me to report back to you lot. So we did, and he was really getting into it. He loved the setup because he loves like the Egyptian stuff because he's a big Stargate fan, so that really appealed to him. The only bit that took him out, and it's sacrilege, but when the poacher gets killed by the two mummies squishing, he laughed, and I mean,
really?
I'm filing for divorce tomorrow for that.
What does he have against poachers?
Yeah. I'm afraid he did do an involuntary laugh at that. And I had to explain. I said, kids were traumatized. I told you about Dan, but that was your earliest memory, wasn't it? So there was a generation of children.
This is my very
yes.
Yeah.
This is my very earliest memory of Doctor Who. Wow. So and bear in mind, this was shown when I was 2.5.
Wow.
2.5. And I remembered it vividly. Not just this scene where the poor gamekeeper there is crushed to death between the bosoms of two mummies. What a way to go.
If you're gonna go, there's lots worse ways.
Yeah,
Gary,
it came out with.
I've been on a couple of nights out where I've been stuck in between two yummy mummies, but that was a whole other night. But this scene, every time I see it, and it's not just this moment, it's the moments before it and the ones that follow directly afterwards as well, where they're basically trapped in that cottage, aren't they? They've got one gun, and there's mummies, there's the man with the scary face, and I remember it just being very, very evocative, very engrossing.
Do you remember?
And terrifying as well.
I'm curious, Stan. Do you remember clearly? I mean, obviously the visual sticks with you. Do you remember? Is it that the screams stuck with you because? Him screaming, you've got Warlock screaming when he's killed, all these screams when people die.
Gary, I've been thinking about that tonight, and I think it was all of that. I think it was the intensity of it all, because what stayed with me was the two looming figures, which I only remembered as sort of shapes. What I remembered more vividly was the little house, the little cottage with the windows, and the fact that it was such a small building. But in my head, there weren't like 3 mummies; there were about 40. And I'd imagined looking out, that they'd looked out of the window of the cottage and seen just a wall of these things. And that memory stayed with me for years until I worked out what story it is. So, Chris, I'm still talking to you, mate, but believe me, it was terrifying.
He did enjoy it, and it kept him guessing, the Sutekh holding back the explosion, he wasn't expecting that. So it kept him guessing. It kept his interest. But yeah, oh, Dan, he did let me down with that, I've got to admit.
I'd be interested to see,
comments
Sarah,
here.
if you showed him now the 4 parts with the more measured pacing. I'd be really interested to see, now that he's seen it this way first, how he thinks the original would be.
I can't believe the amount of comments that we've got here. Some of them aren't even about the hand, and we've got a lot of people watching here across YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook and X. Keep them coming. Hello, Callie Summer. Why were only some of the space TARDIS scenes changed? We don't know, Stephen. That's probably one to ask Ben. Are the other... And Callie asks, are the other tales supplied with new effects and music? No, they're not. This was a special presentation in this. Maybe future ones will be again. Who knows? We've got a howdy there from My Name is Charlie as well. We've got Ian Scales in the live chat too, who says, curiously, this was Ncuti's best performance, everything toned down, though the anti-hero stuff and the provocative comments were still there. Yes, I know what you're referring to. He was trying to tell Ruby, wasn't he, what had happened and when, and sort of roll out the story.
Yeah.
And he said that people were looting, didn't he? That people were looting the pyramids.
Yeah, got to get that colonialism in,
We've got a comment from the rabbi in the live chat here, Sfila Betkin, who said, how do they manage to be woke in a 2-minute intro that Marcus Scarman was looting? And I did... That didn't really glare at me, but afterwards, when I thought about it, I thought, okay, by modern terms, they would call that looting, I suppose, but that's not how it was seen at the time. We're going back 100 odd years, very different time, different sensibilities. Yeah, and the drive was towards a greater understanding, wasn't it, of the entire world and cultures. So I think that was cynical, and I do agree, Rabbi. I think that language is completely and utterly unnecessary.
The doctor wouldn't say that. Ruby might have said that because that's a very modern sensibility, but then the doctor should have been able to say, as being so far above everything, this is how it looked, but this is what it was like at the time. It was very clunkily done, really was.
Stephen Braddock says, again, it completely spoilt Sutekh's build-up instead of showing bits of him at different angles before the reveal in episode 3. Plus, it spoilt the servant of Sutekh, scene 1. That's what you were saying, wasn't it, Sarah?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Just, I don't understand the logic of that.
Random question here from Fly Highland. Who voiced the servant of Sutekh? Was that Wolf as well? As far as I know, it was, John.
Yeah, it sounded like him. The first bit when he's got the helmet on,
where he says, "Look at me."
Yeah. He needs no other. Yeah.
Daryl Joyce is asking, why change the multicolored time corridor when it appears in Ncuti's season poster? Heaven only knows. Frank reminds us. Yeah, it's anybody's guess. Frank reminds us here, this is just an alternative take. You still have the original version to enjoy anytime. That's largely how I feel about it.
As long as they don't do a George Lucas on us and basically take back the original and say, right, this is now the definitive version, because I will come out like Rambo.
But I've got to say, like I said before, I was kind of dreading this before, and I've got to admit, on the whole, I was pleasantly surprised with how respectful, for the most part, they were with the original.
I breathed a sigh of relief. Yeah, I mean, as much as I grumbled about, that last bit. Okay, it was the bit after. It was the shooting scene at the end that gave me whiplash, took me right out of it. And I thought, here we go. You can't resist, Russell.
And we should say, Dan, though, that this was by far, of all the tales of the TARDIS so far, this was by far the shortest, topping and tailing. I think that's probably 3 minutes total. If you add up the beginning and end scene, they're all far longer.
Some of them were far longer.
Tales of the TARDIS.
Yeah, they were. I've got a comment here from David Mullen, who asks, do the producers today see this version of the story as supplanting the original? Surely this is the case. Otherwise, why bother? Well, no, they don't see it as supplanting the original. They appreciate there's a huge market for those original episodes on Blu-ray. The otherwise, why bother? The idea is to take advantage of the fact that, I mean, they didn't know this obviously when they shot this, because we are jam in the middle of that 2-part season finale, and if all had have gone to plan, then Doctor Who would have really connected with the viewing public again, and people should be chomping at the bit for the second half. Can't wait to see more. So give a dog a bone. No, not that dog, not the big dog on the screen. Give a dog a bone, throw the audience a bone, and say, okay, to whet your appetite, to fill in any blanks that you may have, or just to entertain you for just under an hour and a half. Here is something to keep your tastes, your juices flowing until the weekend. I think it's that simple. I think this was done with absolutely the best of intentions, and I do suspect that. I think that you'd have to be pretty anti everything on principle not to see that there were good intentions behind this. What myself.
I see is when that collection season comes out, I'm going to get the original as broadcast. I'm going to get the original with updated CGI, and I'm going to get this version with CGI as well. So I'm doing all right.
I don't think they're going to include any of the tales from the TARDIS in the collection set.
I think you're right.
I think they'll be collected themselves separately, like in a 2-3 disc set, whatever. But they're not going to mix this into the collection.
Because Gary, I was watching this, and although I liked all the new effects and everything that we've just said, I generally speaking, I thought this was good. I certainly felt it did no harm. It met its brief very, very well, and it did hold my attention. And I didn't feel that this story, which, as I say, this is one of my earliest memories of anything ever, and I didn't feel like anything was solid with this. But when I was watching it, because I'm used to the Blu-rays, I thought the remastering job of this was a lot less intensive, and the results a lot less impressive of those film sequences than we're used to on the collection Blu-ray range. What did you think?
Do you think? Well, I'm sorry, Sarah. Go ahead.
Okay. Was there something wrong with like the color saturation? Because there were things that were really bright, especially in the pirate, and I was like, bloody hell,
that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. It was noticeable. Yes. It really took me back. Yeah,
I mean, maybe there will be some sort of physical release for Tales of the TARDIS. I don't know. I mean, particularly for people overseas who can't see these by conventional methods, because they are paid for by the BBC license fee, by BBC Studios. So they're not part of the deal to distribute this, for example, with Disney Plus or anything like that. So it's that's a pity. But maybe they will have some sort of extended life. I mean, but you see what I mean, though, don't you? The grain wasn't there, the detail wasn't there.
There's two possible explanations. One is that they cut it down to the length they want it to be, and then remastered everything. Or did they use? See, I'm not even sure if they've started working on the season 13 collection yet. The only other possible explanation is
I don't know either.
They took the full length remastered one that they're going to use on the collection, and then cut that down. I tend to think that probably it will be a different remastering for that than the remastering we got here.
Well, I don't know, because I think with them trying to save cost, you would think that they would kind of double their efforts, wouldn't you, really, to try and do the remastering, put this production money into that as well, team up, then do it, so that everybody wins, from a budgetary point of view. But it's going to be interesting.
Well, because bear in mind, they've got to remaster the original untouched 4-parter. They've got to redo that. And this one, if eventually Pyramids of Mars on that set, it's going to be the snazzed up with new effects. This could be that, maybe. Who knows?
I mean, if it wasn't cost effective, they wouldn't do it, and it will obviously have been costed. It had been costed relative to the project, to the reach it would find on the Whoniverse hub in the iPLAYER app. So I would imagine it won't have been arrived at, over a 10-minute meeting. They probably thought quite carefully about doing this, about where to put the money.
And also, I think they probably realised as well that as Doctor Who fans, we'll never buy multiple versions of same story.
Yes,
We never do
never.
anything like that. We don't do things like that.
Do you know what, John? They missed a trick here. They should have put this in cinemas because I would have actually paid and watched Pyramids of Mars
Oh,
at the
yeah.
cinema as a feature
Well,
length.
they do
Yeah.
very well at the BFI, don't they? The classic stories. I would imagine this probably will be the one that gets shown at the BFI when that time comes. Ian Scales is watching on YouTube here and says, with all the bad stuff, I am very grateful to Russell T Davies for this version of Pyramids being shown, plus all of the episodes of Who History on iPad now. So it obviously works for Ian, having all of those at the touch of a button. We've got Mark Leeseth in the live chat too, who said Pyramids of Mars was so good because it was a bottle episode. They learned nothing because Blink got devalued with the overuse of the Weeping Angels. Well, everybody thinks that they can do better than what's gone before, I suppose. It's people want to break new ground, don't they? Garbage says, I didn't know it was a 75-minute edit. I thought it was a 4-minute minisode or something. I might have to watch this and see what I think.
Yeah.
Yes,
Happy to help.
Very interested in what you think. Yes.
Did you turn off Garbage just after you saw Ncuti and then it ended? You thought,
Well, I can't
"Oh, that's
see
it."
it. I believe it. I'll tell
David
you what,
Jenkins. David Jenkins is with us. That's our friend from Lichfield Way. And
Oh,
he
yes.
says, amazingly, the past is a different place. 1910 isn't 2024. Sarah, who'd have thought?
I would have thought, indeed. No, I was just going to say, as somebody who hasn't been watching the series other than hearing your reviews and seeing clips, seeing Ncuti sit still greatly improved his performance. I still don't like him, but it was probably the best I've ever seen him.
Yeah,
Because he wasn't
I like
moving
him.
around being bombastic. It was just
Every
being
time
quiet.
he sits down and gets to inhabit that character for a few moments, things start to look a bit brighter. Things have got brighter instantly because Will Hadcroft is in the live chat. Of course he is. And he says, I felt the story itself, the sets, the actors, etc. outshone the updated effects by far. Yeah, I think that's fair.
I agree.
That's absolutely fair. We've got Darren Bradley's in the live chat. Hello, Darren. Darren and friend. Bloody hell. He's got... Sorry. Oh, Darren. Darren Bradley says... Out on the town with the mate. Oh, God. It looks like he's had one too many. My childhood home backs onto the woods from seeing the mummy roaming around the trees and poachers' traps. I daren't go into them for weeks after. So it's another one who was terrified by this story. My name is Charlie's in the live chat. Hello, Charlie. He says, forget the football. I'll be cheering on Sutekh this weekend. Is there football on? Is there football on, Sarah?
Yeah.
That's me. I'm a geek.
I'm a proper
It's on,
geek. I don't do that.
It's Euro football on ITV.
It is.
Yeah,
We've got Philip Roy in the live chat too. Doctor Who himself, the helping hand of... So people missed that hand.
I missed that hand. I was good.
You know there's going to be a campaign on Twitter, isn't there, within the hour going, bring back the hand.
Hashtag justice for the hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was, of course, as Peter Harrington reminds us, there was originally a slimmer edit of this out on VHS as well. I think the first 6 or 7 Doctor Who stories that came to VHS were heavily edited, weren't they? All the individual episodes.
They came out with the little yellow sticker later, complete and unedited, to get you to buy it, the new version.
Yeah.
Wow.
Cliff Maxwell's watching in the live chat. Sorry, what was that, John?
And they then did it BBC about 6 times after with every different show that gets to buy different iterations.
They did it with Blackadder, they did it with Faulty Towers, they did it with everything, Poldark, you name it, they hacked it up. Cliff Maxwell is in the live chat and he says, let me get this straight. This was an exclusive updated version on iPlayer which isn't available outside the UK, so no American viewers could see it, really? Yeah, the entire line of these Tales of the TARDIS are produced in the same way. So they are tied to the license fee rather than the independent production, which is the actual show is. The 70s Omnibus edit was the most viewed Doctor Who story until City of Death. Was it?
Wow.
I didn't know that either.
I didn't know that.
That's a fantastical fact.
One
Learn something new every day.
Going back to Cliff's point, though, I understand why he's frustrated because surely they're trying to get this new generation in to watch it. This would have been perfect on Disney Plus. It's exactly like the remit what they're trying to do. So the fact that it isn't available in Disney Plus is
I can't see vintage 50-year-old vintage material of anything ever being on Disney Plus. I mean, I haven't got it, so I don't know, but I wouldn't imagine there's anything like this on there. I mean, maybe some of their old films, but you've seen what they plaster all sorts of sensitivity captions on those, don't they? So I don't know.
I've just got an image of Gary in the States at like 2 a.m. in the dark under a lamppost, like someone handing him over a copy. Tales of the TARDIS.
right in the back alley there in a brown paper bag with a grease spot on the bottom. Yeah.
I like it. Daryl Joyce is here. This is an interesting take. The TARDIS on a key, the TARDIS key on its chain was probably the only thing that I'd have been happy to see improved. Yeah, because that special effect, it obviously was, I think it was probably quite ropey then. It certainly looks very ropey now. It always looked ropey to me on VHS as soon as I had it, and yet that was left completely untouched. Yeah. Perhaps that would have been harder to change, because it is very, very clear that is on a couple of wires and it dangling its way towards Scarman there. So it is strange to see that completely untouched. But as I say, I mean, maybe it must have been costed in some way. What can we do? What is feasible in the time and with the budget that we have? And Peter Harrington's got an interesting question here too. I wonder if they got Gabriel Wolfe, who obviously has returned to the role voicing Sutekh in the new episodes. I wonder if they got Wolfe to alter any dialogue. It would be interesting to know, or record additional dialogue, because Nick Briggs recorded additional Dalek voices, didn't he, in the style of the original voice artists for the Daleks in colour. So until we read up on a bit about this, or Ben Cook speaks more publicly, I don't know.
I thought there were a couple of bits that sounded new. Yeah, from Sutekh. So
I didn't.
Yeah, I'll be interested to know if that is the case.
I know that a lot of the interchange in this was cut. That whole thing about when he's asking where he was from, and he says Gallifrey, and then originally Sutekh says planet names mean nothing to me. What's the galactic coordinates? 10,0002 by 11,00. All that part was cut.
Yes, it was. What I thought was interesting that they didn't cut out was the scene in the lodge after they discover Lawrence's body, and Sarah's a go at him. And the doctor says, five people have died, and it's the wrong number, isn't it? Because didn't they alter it in the novel? I wondered if that was going to get edited slightly.
It is 5, though, isn't it?
No, he says four men have died. 5, is that right, John?
No, it's the butler, Collins, Nameen, Dr. Warlock, and Lawrence Scarman are the 4, and then Marcus Scarman would be the 5th.
Okay.
Stephen Braddock says, I agree that the colours were off in the indoor scenes. Scarman looked dead and white, but outside looked normal and healthy.
He did. It was
yeah.
Yeah,
maybe this was the cadaver cut.
Yeah.
Could be. There's some fantastic pictures from the recording of Pyramids of Mars, from the location work there at Stargrove, which of course they returned to, didn't they, for Image of the Fendel? Was it the following year or the year after? It was the year after, wasn't it?
Yeah, year after.
Bintube is here. Hello, Bintube, who says, do you think the Eye of Horus is going to show up in the finale? I can't really see how it can't, or at least be referenced in some way.
Yeah.
It's got to be referenced. Yeah.
I did call back a few weeks back, actually, where I think you see an image that looks like a drawing of the Eye of Horus in Space Babies on the wall.
Oh, no, that's interesting.
Yeah. That was me watching it, and I was going, ooh.
I'm curious, John, since Pyramids of Mars is your all-time favorite story and you've seen it hundreds of times, have you rigged your house to where the doors only operate when you make the sign of Horus there, and that's where your house actually works? Wow, that's pretty
There's
good.
Traps, there's priest holes, I've got it all in case I take a sick day in the Boston.
Generally speaking, so far, it does seem to be more smiles about this than not. I think we're all not that affronted by what's been done to this fantastic story that seems to have a place in all our hearts. That seems to be pretty clear. Opinions in the live chat, they vary. I think that's fair to say. But then again, they probably always would have. Doctor Who is very, very special. Of course, it is to all of us. Time for a quick break. I think we'll reconvene in a couple of minutes. I'll leave you with this horrifying image. It's horrifying, Chris. It's horrifying. I'll leave you with this horrifying image whilst we drift off for a couple of minutes. You enjoy this musical interlude by popular request. We're bringing it back. Thank you, Gareth. This is awesome. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
You were gone before we could tell you were number one. Number one. Sliding in a cloud of tobacco smoke. Kids TV with a dirty joke. You called it hope and pulp and fluff, but it rang with the truth of waiter stuff. You were gone. We never got to tell you were number one. Number one. You were cranking it out at a rapid pace. Every world felt like a real place. Your brain and your pen might have taken you high, but faith marked you for the cheap sci-fi. You were gone. We never got to tell you were number one. Number one. You were gone. We never got to tell you were number one. Number one. Slapping in a cloud of tobacco smoke. Kids TV with a dirty joke. You called it hope and pulp and fluff, but it rang with the truth of waiter stuff. You were gone. We never got to tell you were number one. Number one. You were gone. We never got to tell you were number one. Number one. Number one.
Never gets old, does it? Welcome back to Type 40 Live, covering the whole Whoniverse, both on and off screen. Here with my panel, we've got starry-eyed girl Sarah Graham, John Yulden, and Gary Akers here too. And we've been talking about this special presentation of the classic 1975 story Pyramids of Mars, all part of the new Strand Tales of the TARDIS there on BBC4 and the Whoniverse Hub on the BBC iPlayer. People have been chipping into across YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and on X2 with lots of comments, observations, pet peeves, and their hot takes of their own. Most people seem to be saying nice things. This does seem to have gone down pretty well. Who'd have thought? Let's go and see what else they've got to say, and any guesses about who and what could be turning up at the weekend, as it all ties back into the finale, the season finale of Doctor Who. Now, there has been speculation out there that David Tennant may appear as the 14th Doctor, but what about if they could get their little CGI monkeys to drop an even earlier incarnation of the Doctor in? I don't know. We can hope, John. We can hope, can't we?
Blasphemy, sorry.
Get Capaldi in.
And people do love that tune that we played you there in the break. That was courtesy of Gareth Roberts the fabulous Robert Holmes
Next
song.
time I go karaokeing, I'm going to request that song because I want to do that.
I suspect they may not have it to hand, Gary. I could.
I'll do it a
could be wrong.
cappella, Dan.
People
I
love
would
it.
pay to see
It's
that.
fantastic. Yeah. And people, yes, reminding us that sadly, yes, news that the great actor Donald Sutherland has passed away today. No time for a tribute today. He wasn't really connected with Doctor Who, but he was nearly sort of cast as Doctor Who all the way back in 1990. Coast to Coast were putting the Doctor Who movie together way back then. He was their ideal choice to play the Doctor for quite some time. In fact, that was how they managed to seduce the great Leonard Nimoy, who they intended to direct the thing. I don't know. I think they did speak to Sutherland about it, but I don't think it ever went very far.
Remember those pictures, Dan, of Donald Sutherland with Sylvester McCoy's hat?
I do. Was that in Doctor Who Bulletin, or was it in Celestial Toy Room? I can't remember. If the other Gary's watching, maybe he can let us fill it in whether he was responsible for that or not. Gary Lee, memory's playing tricks on me.
didn't they do a poster as well, very similar to like in design to Superman the movie, but it was like last.
They did. Yeah, it's fantastic. I love it. I love it. Lots of people paying tribute to the late Donald Sutherland in the live chat. It would be, I think we haven't praised Tom Baker and Elizabeth Sladen quite enough on this edition of the show. Yeah, we do this all the time, come to think of it. Both of them absolute treasures. The late Elizabeth Sladen, very much missed. Tom Baker, still very much still with us, very associated with Doctor Who. They were at the height of their powers. Their connection, their chemistry was absolutely joyous in, well, this entire season, come to think of it. Even the peaks and the troughs of any era of Doctor Who, these two were always dependable. They always felt like they were best friends, straight out of a Winnie the Pooh book or the Chronicles of Narnia. There is something classical literature about this particular pairing. And I think that nowhere is it underlined more than in this story and in the quieter moments. I think my favourite of all time is probably when they're in the cottage and Sarah says to Dr. Warlock, isn't it? Oh, I'm a journalist. And it shakes her hand. And he says, well, who's that? Oh, no, it's Scarman, isn't it? Lawrence Scarman. He says, well, who's that? And she says, oh, that's the Doctor. the mocking, the gentle mocking of it. Yeah. So beautifully underplayed and so well written. But obviously Robert Holmes knew this character inside out by that point as well. It's just one of a multitude of moments in this. The image of Sarah that I always remember most from this story is her holding the rifle, though, Sarah, because that's not something that Doctor Who companions tended to do. You don't get that many firearms in Doctor Who generally unless they're zap, zap, zap guns, do you?
No, it's true. And it's, I just love how she just takes control, it's,
I know what I'm doing, Doctor. That's what she says, isn't it?
Just, yeah. And she's a brilliant shot, if it wasn't for that pesky mental power,
That's my favorite. That's got to be my favorite Sarah Jane line where, she's getting ready and the Doctor's going, don't forget this, don't forget that. And she's like, as she's loading the gun, I know what I'm doing. It's like she's more annoyed that the Doctor's bugging her about it than she is not confident that she can actually hit her target. I thought that's a quintessential ceremony. And on this one today, during the scene where they're deactivating the jar, I just I was pulled out because I was just watching Tom there and Sarah in that outfit, and they're working on the jar, and I just thought, this is glorious. This is Doctor Who.
I mean, it's the gamekeeper's
yes
as well, which I love to bits, where she throws the sweaty Gelignite down. And he has that miserable face on, doesn't he? And and the two, you can see they're just perfectly in tune with each other. Good friend, they're riffing off each other, and I do love. I wouldn't put your hand in there; it could be a ferret.
They've got genuine comic timing again when there's that pause, and Sarah says, "Maybe he sneezed." It's just, the Doctor's.
It's so good.
And you know what? It almost, in a way, Dan, have you ever thought this? It almost, in a way, feels like a lot of this. Of course, it was the glorious dialogue written by Robert Holmes, but the way they play it, so much of it comes off as just like ad lib because they're such in sync with each other. They're so in sync, and I can see Tom Baker and Sarah. They could. The director, Patty Russ, just going, you know what, just kind of riff and just kind of go with what you come up with. It feels that natural.
The turn with the mummy, wasn't it? Yeah.
And usually I would hate things like that. It's like that scene in Star Wars, isn't it, where Han and Chewbacca, they do the double take as well. Usually I can't stand stuff like that. But in this, I sort of tolerate it because it's very much the exception rather than the rule. And I think the stakes are getting quite higher. And I think, again, thinking of the small children, something like that. Okay, if the Doctor's not scared, they've got one another. They're able to not exactly goof around, but there's time for just a split second like that, John. I don't think it really breaks the spell at all. Because it had got quite intense for a while, hadn't it? We'd seen the Doctor in real physical and emotional pain. And so it's good to balance that a bit for the children, isn't it?
Yeah, I do. And, they're just so good of when you've got a scary bit of just pulling you into a bit of comedy where he taps on the head and
Yeah.
you know you're soaking my shirt, you know, that's great. And then I also love the bit in the priest hole, go priest hole in a Victorian folly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like that. And she's like, don't be so pedantic, like, you know. And it
He's there
works
sort of
brilliantly.
rubbing his head, isn't he, with frustration? Yeah. We've got Sean here in the live chat who said Sarah Jane would always call the Doctor out if he acts too alien. I think she was amused by it and sometimes confounded by it. But it's a lovely bit of characterization there that I think that other companion and Doctor pairings have had their little wrinkles as well. I think particularly the Doctor and Ace, that was very effective, and the Doctor and Tegan to a lesser extent. But this is like nectar, and it just gets better with age, if anything. I think as TV gets louder, I think I certainly appreciate the quieter moments and the little pieces, the little delicacies to these performances.
This is special.
even more.
The only other one I think really I love is when you talk about Brain and Morbius, where he goes, well, if you don't cheer up, I'll bite your nose.
Yeah, I love that line.
That's just those two. It just works. You know, they're superb.
What I love about Sarah is she doesn't hero worship the Doctor. And I think this is one of the biggest difference between classic Who companions and new Who companions.
Yeah.
She's not afraid to call him out. You know, like she snaps at him. You know, when he's being what she thinks is being unfeeling about Lawrence and his brother. But even from the beginning, she's teasing him. You know, when he's doing that sullen face right at the beginning because he doesn't want to go back.
Yeah,
and she
she's
goes,
putting the hand.
"Oh,
on the
you're a
head.
Time Lord," and she just really doesn't care.
Yeah.
And I do love. We talk. Oh, sorry, Dan. Yeah.
Well, go on, you carry on.
Okay. I was just going to say. So we talked about it the other day as well. About what I like about this story is the fact, you know, where now they kind of made the Doctor a bit more godlike. I like the fact in this story you talk about, he's just a traveller. You know, that's what he says in the story, and it works very, very well. You know, that's all he wants to do: travel through time and space. He's not this big supreme being. You know, he's just somebody that wants to explore the universe. It's great.
Because on one hand, there's the pomposity of the Doctor and the stuff that Sarah Jane is mocking, and yet he is a lot of the time quite a humble person. He doesn't think of it. He certainly doesn't view himself as some sort of higher form of life. Not really. He takes his responsibilities seriously. And sometimes in some incarnations, he takes himself more seriously than others. But I think generally speaking, that the Doctor respects all forms of life with equal measure. And moments like that, I'm just a traveller. I'm just a traveller. That's all you need to know. That's all he wants to do. That's how he spends his time, to travel with his friends. The character of Sutekh, obviously, just that one appearance, a lot like the Zygons. People hankered for the reappearance of the Zygons for a very, very long time, didn't they? And I don't think it's been quite the same for Sutekh, because there are lots of one-off villains in Doctor Who history that have never come back, and some of them are really, really memorable. But now that he's back, now that it's happening, I do think it's quite delicious, the possibilities for it. The villainy that's on display in here, with the character being paralysed for much of the story, doesn't really do a lot in the physical sense, but the threat of him being this massive psychic force, that never loses its power for me every time I see this. And so when you look at what's going on screen at the moment in the 2024 series, and the precise place that we've left the action with there, you think, okay, if Sutekh is free, the possibilities for what's going to kick off there, they are really quite delicious. And I suspect there's a lot that's going to be put on screen that we haven't got the faintest idea what's coming on Saturday as part of Empire of Death. I am genuinely excited about this. But obviously, I hope that it doesn't in any way harm this character and this story and this slice of the golden age of British television and the golden age of Doctor Who. There was a line that the 15th Doctor spoke in the final moments, wasn't it? He's talking to Ruby, and she says, "You've beaten him before. You beat Sutekh," and he said, "I did write this down. He's evolved into a Titan," said the 15th Doctor. What on earth does that mean? Does that mean more physically, more mentally powerful? Anybody got any ideas about where that could go?
This is the moment where it all fell apart for me. I was like, you just couldn't help it, could you? No, it doesn't need to be any more powerful. This episode has clearly shown how powerful he is, just being paralyzed. Literally, you've just said, Dan, he was sat down for the majority of the episode. The Doctor was terrified. And Tom Baker did a brilliant job of conveying that terror and what it would mean. So I don't understand why Sutekh needs to evolve. Titan just made me think of Thanos. I just thought, oh my God, we've already got Unit being the Avengers Tower. Now we've got a Titan.
You're right. You're right, Sarah, because when you look at it and you think, well, in Pyramids of Mars, he says, doesn't he? He says, I'm going to hurl this dead planet, something along the lines of this dead planet, into the farthest reaches of the universe. That's how powerful he is. He can literally just decimate a planet at his will. So you don't really need to call him a Titan because he's already there, you know. But I agree with you, Dan. I really, really want it to work. I really am looking forward to it because, you know, I'm never going to get what's been in my head for 30, 40 years watching Pyramids of Mars about how devastating this thing can be. But I think I might get some snippets of it. You know, we've already seen trailers where there's, you know, big waves of sand coming in and, you know, there's devastation. So, you know, that's what I want from Doctor Who, you know, and if it delivers on that.
My guess is that when I heard that line, Dan, I was thinking, okay, the original Sutekh was an all-powerful alien, but he wasn't a god. He wasn't on the level of, you know, like the Ragnarok, you know, pantheon, that kind of thing. And so I thought they've got to connect up the fact that in the 1975 original, he is a very powerful alien. I mean, the Osirans are aliens that can die. They do have, you know, the Doctor shoves them to the end of time in the time corridor, and he says, is Sutekh dead? Yes, he is. And they have to bridge that gap between him being just an all-powerful alien in the original and putting him, like, what was that line, Dan, in Legend of Ruby Sunday, where he says, you know, Maestro was the god of music. Mara is the god of
beasts.
Yeah. So I think they had to do something even acknowledged in dialogue that now Sutekh now is a peer of these other gods. And I think my guess is maybe that was one of the ways to do it with that line.
I'm going to say there's going to be a certain amount of retconning involved because obviously in the original script the character wasn't meant to be a literal god, but I think that we can afford to sort of to go with it a little and see what he means. Were they, depending on which kind of alien beings, if they've got technology at their disposal and knowledge, abilities, be they psychic abilities or whatever, it effectively could, if it's highly evolved enough, it effectively does, by our terms, make them gods or godlike. So it depends on how literal we're going to go with that. I'm willing to ride that out until the end of Empire of Death to find out myself.
I'm going to go out on a limb. I don't think anything Russell can show us in this episode can live up to most people's expectations. And as impressive as that Christopher Nolan sequence is, because I have seen the clip, I don't want to see Sutekh just a load of CG mess, because that isn't. I don't want to do the Marvel route. Obviously, we need some effects. Show me the psychological. I want to see him, you know, torture Ncuti Gatwa, and I don't just mean for my own pleasure. I just mean to. I want him to.
She does mean that.
And you think you know someone, everybody. You think you know someone.
What's the name? What's the number for the quick?
That's the Freudian slip of the day.
We've got a few more comments. A few more. Yeah, we know what you mean. We think we do. Let's gloss over it.
Please stand by.
There's a few more comments here to get to in the live chat on YouTube. My God, we have a mass of people watching there on X in particular. But people on X, give us some more comments. You're very, very quiet. We need more comments on X, please. But Daryl Joyce is here on YouTube, and he says Sutekh is now a Titan, so he won't be appearing as anything but a giant CGI dog. Is that right? I don't think we've seen Sutekh yet. I believe that was one of his acolytes, one of his envoys. I think that's what that dog beast is. I think it's like the sarcophagus. It's another familiar of Sutekh, and we're yet to meet him. Cybermat Strikes says, great cliffhanger. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't looking forward to this weekend's finale. And Peter Harrington says simply that my mum always said, the more you play with it, the worse it gets. I'll stop when I need glasses. Yeah,
I'd ask you to clarify that, Peter, but I'm actually wearing two. So,
oh, there we go. I don't think you can really top that. So. I'm not going to try. So yes, the classic Doctor Who story, The Pyramids of Mars, is now available to watch in another form if you're in Britain or if you're very sort of tech and internet savvy. It's a Tales of the TARDIS special presentation of Pyramids of Mars that premiered on BBC4 and on the iPlayer this evening as we recorded. So we've been bringing you our instant reactions to the entire thing, and we're having a blast doing so as well. It's all in a lead up to Empire of Death. Of course, that's coming at the weekend. That's Friday the 21st if you're in other territories there on Disney Plus, and the following day, Saturday the 22nd on BBC One in its traditional Saturday tea time slot. For the rest of us, I know some people are seeing this at the cinema, and if you have got a cinema ticket for the two-part finale there in the cinema theatre, I hope you have a brilliant time. I certainly had a lot of fun with the first part, and this one has a lot to live up to. Let us know what you think of all of it in the comments, how you're looking forward to the finale there, of course, and what did you make of all of this? Is this something that you feel could set a dangerous precedent whereby we end up with new versions of all 150 odd of the classic stories, or at least the ones that exist? Do you think it's something that's worth doing every now and again when there's a very marketable reason to do so? I think I can see not the need for it, but I can see why it may work. And if there's any way we can find out, John, how well this has performed, I'd be very interested to see what their expectations were of it and whether it will deliver, if not right now, tonight, then in the long run. I think they wouldn't have made a seventh if people hadn't have watched the other six. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I don't think we'll see lots of these, but I certainly think you could see more, like if they bring back further classic villains, they could use that for further stories and updating them to link in with the new series. But
I'd be very surprised if they weren't going to do one with Mel, given as she's already come back. I think that would be on the cards.
Well, they better do Delta and the Bannerman if they do something Mel.
Well, we know we'd be in the front row for that, don't we?
It would be.
If they don't, I'm going to come looking for them. Let us know what you think of it all in the live chat, by all means, about the Tales from the TARDIS, about that new special episode of that, about Pyramids of Mars in general, and all the other stuff that we've been coming out with on this edition of the show.
I'm Leela, over 17, and you should watch Typhoid.
I'll do whatever you say, Leela.
if you insist, my love. If you insist. Yes, from one vortex, one end of the diamond vortex there. My God, that brings back some memories. It wouldn't be a Type 40 live show without we brought you one more thing. Yes, one more thing. This is our regular eye across the creative side to the Whoniverse with one last look up your temporal schism in search of the prettiest pictures from out there. So we're talking about digital art. We're talking about traditional art, things that people have painted and drawn or made or posed, just like Ian O'Brien here, Ian O Time Lord. Now he sets his action figures up in little scenes just like this one, all in remembrance of Pyramids of Mars there. So he's put Marcus Scarman with a couple of mummies, the sarcophagus. He's got Sutekh, and even those little jar things there, the doors. And Scarman is holding the smouldering tumbler, isn't it, that contains the coordinates that come out of the sarcophagus in the last half.
Yeah. Wow, that's great.
That is beautiful. Oh, I love this.
Talented.
I think Ian spends hours doing this.
With one of the best Target novel covers ever made.
Yes.
That's Chris Akaleus cover.
Mhm.
Fabulous
Great
stuff. There was 3 covers to that one in the end. It was. I think I've certainly got at least two of those. But yeah, Ian has a lot of fun with his action figures, and I always enjoy looking at his work.
Are these custom fit? Could you actually buy these figures?
I think this was a play set, but I could be wrong. So many figures have come out, and there are some very creative fans out there. Of course there were. So yes, as regards the fan art side to it, what we want to know where we can find fan artists, where we can find fan art, and get it up on the view screen. So the way it works is that you put them in touch with us, or us in touch with them. We're not really bothered which way around, just as long as we get to see their fabulous work. So next up, what have we got? There's this now. I thought this was really eye-catching, John. It's the kind of thing that Ace would probably put on her bomber jacket, or maybe as a kid you would have slapped on the front of your BMX. This is from Cat Doesn't Exist on Instagram.
Oh, yeah, like it.
That's cool.
Like it.
Oh, I love that. I love the
It is kind of
colours.
cool.
That's great.
Who'd have thought? A neon pink Sutekh the Destroyer. Happiness will prevail after all.
Yeah, I can put that on my rally lizard and go and do bunny hops on the curbs with that one. Yeah.
Well, I'm betraying my generation now, but it makes me think of Pogs. Can you remember them?
Oh yeah.
I worked on Pogs. I used to design Pogs.
Yeah.
I'd wear this all day on a shirt or a jacket.
Fantastic, says Ezra Goldstein. Yeah, this really caught my eye. I love the colours. I like that Cat, who I'm convinced does exist, has had a lot of fun putting this together. Peter Harrington says it would have looked nice on my grifter.
Nice.
Yeah, I never had a grifter. I always wanted a grifter. I had a striker, which was the junior version of the grifter. But yeah, I love this stuff. Next up is this digital poster. This is the work of Cloisters of Doom, a fantastic arrangement of various elements that we see in that classic story, including the original time corridor effect that they got rid of for the new one. But what I really like about this is the fact that he's put Sarah in there with that rifle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Really nice. I do like that, and I actually quite like the way he's done the pyramid as part of the time corridor triangle as well.
Yeah, it's really well done.
I love the burning priory on the right.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see that as like a movie poster in cinemas. Again, let's release it at the cinema. It'd be brilliant.
And the colour of green around the eyes, it looks fantastic.
Yeah, it really makes it pop.
Fantastic as well, says Ezra. And we've got a lovely from Peter Harrington. Couldn't agree more. So that's from Cloister of Doom. They put out artwork out on X. Next up, it's this one from Stephen Braddock. Are you still in the live chat? This is his illustration of Pyramids of Mars, featuring a mummy, the Doctor, and Sutekh with a pyramid there at the bottom, and a kind of smoky blend of golden hues, as if heat is rising there wherever the Doctor is, as he ponders the threat of Sutekh. What I really like about this one, Stephen, is I think this is the kind of illustration you would have found in one of those 1970s Doctor Who annuals.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, it's definitely got
Very
that
good
technique, that style. And I saw this because he posted this in the Type 40 Facebook group, and I would say it was the colours that really struck me, with the fire behind it, and just the detail, on the mummy, on the bandages, and it's just absolutely stunning.
Yeah,
giving it a little bit of gold, I think, just to show a little variation of light in those bandages. And I love that
he has the nod to the original Egyptian setting with the tree and the pyramid down at the bottom left. That's a great touch.
That was in the original establishing shot, because that was also replaced as well. They put in a new shot of the pyramid.
It's not all just about the current adventure. You acknowledge the establishing shot.
We've got nice, says Philip Roy, and another fantastic from Ezra as well. It's a full house so far. Peter Harrington wants a mummy. Just any mummy, Peter? We'll help if we can, or get on Tinder.
We're going back to yummy mummies again now, aren't we?
We are. We are.
Your mum
And-
said.
Peter.
and finally, we have this fabulous cartoon of Sutekh here, flying around on what looks like a giant space cookie, crying "free at last!" And there's with both of his hands in the air, fire blazing behind him, and an extra hand coming out of his arse, clutching a pillow. It's called The Claws of Sutekh, and this is from a young artist called Russell T. Davies. I really like this one. Obviously, Russell T. Davies is a very gifted cartoonist too. I've always liked his work, and I just love the movement and the energy in this, and the frantic kind of slightly worried look in Sutekh's eyes.
We'd all look worried if we had an extra hand coming out of us.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
There.
Is that a clue?
Thousands of years with that.
Is that a clue we're going to get at the hand in the finale?
Could be. This illustration actually dates back to around 2003, 2004, I think. It's an old one that appeared in a fanzine, I think. So this has surfaced in the last few days. I was delighted to see it again.
Inspired, isn't it?
It's very cute, yeah. And I like it when Russell's like this. This is Russell at his best when he's just being that fanboy.
Yeah, very, very playful. Another fantastic, that's a full house there from Ezra Goldstein. The cookie is a Snoopy snack, says Fly Highland. I'll take your word for it. Laughing emoji from Peter Harrington. Yeah. Stephen Braddock's here as well, the artist of the last picture. Thank you all for your wonderful comments. I'll keep them coming. You do just that.
Right.
Great work.
And
Steve.
I think that's the perfect note to close this out. Our look at the Pyramids of Mars 2024 Tales of the TARDIS special presentation that we've had with us this evening. All this fabulous piece of artwork. It's understandable, isn't it, John, that a slice of Doctor Who, a chunk of Doctor Who history that is so beloved. It's understandable that it inspires more art than the average story. There's countless examples of Doctor Who fan art wrapped around this story and all that iconography.
Yeah, and it just, I keep saying it, but it amazes me the talents I see off of fans who are able to create this artwork, because, you know, I can't even draw a stick man. So these people put me to shame. So, you know, I've grown up with people drawing and doing these wonderful, wonderful things. So just keep them coming, because I can't do them. So I want to see someone else do it. Buy them.
He's flying on Russell's Rusk, says Peter Harrington.
Going back to space babies now.
Who knows what fan art Empire of Death could inspire at the weekend. Doctor Who season finales are, generally speaking, a big event, certainly within our fandom. Nobody did them better than Russell T Davies back in the day. Yeah, it's pretty evident that he's not exactly at his best this year, but I personally enjoyed the last episode. I know a lot of people did, a good proportion of people did. So I think we have, I think we have a good chance that Doctor Who could leave screens for 6 months. It's going to be off for 6 months. Could leave screens with something impressive and a step up from that we've seen so far. Let's hope it's to be continued this coming Friday/Saturday, depending on whichever time zone you are in. Hopefully there will be more Tales of the TARDIS coming soon as well. I really enjoyed that one. I think we'll have to watch some of the others as well and see. Apparently there's not so much taken out of the others, and I've seen all the joining footage, but I found that quite a relaxing experience, and I've really enjoyed coming and talking about it with you guys too. So thank you everybody for your company.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking us on. It's always a pleasure.
It's been a laugh, hasn't it? And yes, I remind you out there, if you know a fan artist, or you could be a fan artist, just like Stephen Braddock there in the live chat on YouTube, we want to see your work and get it up on the screen. So get in touch with us, or put us in touch with them, or them in touch with us. And we don't really care how it happens. We just want it to happen. We need more artwork, and point us in their direction. By all means, you can get in touch with us as always through our social media. That's Instagram and Twitter. No, it isn't. It's Instagram and X at Type 40 Doctor Who there. Of course it is. And you can find us in the Type 40 Facebook group as well, along with incarnation after incarnation of the Doctor and companions, or maybe undercover. Thank you, everybody. Wow, the comments are still coming. Nice, says Frank Crono. Well, thank you very much. We try our best. The pyramids of work, rest, and play. You have to be old to get that, says Peter Harrington. Did they
I
still
got that reference, Peter. I got
Do
it.
they not use that tagline anymore on the Mars bar in
They've not
Britain?
used that for years, Dan.
Haven't they? I haven't watched adverts for years. Stephen says, really enjoyed tonight. Thanks for showing my artwork. It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. Yeah, so don't be a tart. Let's see your art. Okay, so it's going to kick off. It's going to close out at the weekend. Let us know what you think of that, what you're looking forward to the most. And by all means, hit us with your reviews too, because we'll be here with our hot takes, pet peeves, rants, and raves when the story resumes in the first season of all new Doctor Who starring Ncuti Gatwa. That's drawing to a close. So we'll be right back here in the console room with our instant reactions following the BBC One screening on Saturday evenings. Make sure you've got your notices turned on. Hit the cloister bell. That way you'll find out what we're doing precisely and when we're doing it. You in for that, John?
Oh yeah, bring it on.
I think Ncuti is. He's looking a little bit perturbed, the Doctor, but hopefully he'll rally Gary.
He's looking down at Gary. He's just realised Gary's managed to see it in the US.
What? Yeah, I think he's worked it out.
Honestly, guys and girls and whoever else is watching, I'd really hope this lives up to your expectations, especially yours, Dan, because God bless you.
Well,
you've had so much stick these past few weeks for enjoying it, and
the trick is, honestly, the trick is to not particularly have expectations. Then they can never really be built up or smashed down.
Yeah, but that's really, but you can't live like that. It's really sad. But I want this to. I've never wanted something to deliver for you, my friend, and
yes,
everybody else was enjoying it. So I hope, fingers crossed.
And if anybody listening spots Sarah trying to sneak into the theater screening, take a picture and post it online.
I'm
the
more
truth,
worried.
exactly.
I don't know what you mean.
I'm more worried about her trying to get her boys out of bed right after this show, drag them downstairs.
Oh, let's crank the
I don't know
handle.
where you get these ideas about me. I really don't.
Let's crank the handle and hit the vortex. Type 40 Live is the place to be for the very best in news, views, nostalgia, banter, fan art from 8 p.m. every Thursday, UK time usually, with more live streams and podcasts and everything else floating around too. You've got to make sure to hit the cloister bell and get all the notifications. Get yourself subbed. If you think you're subbed, you may not be, because YouTube can be little tinkers. So please check that you're still subscribed, and we'll see you back here in a few days' time. Yeah, we always have the time if you have the space here at Type 40 Live. See you on the other side of Empire of Death in just a couple of days' time. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.